Welcome back to Kivumbi 2017 here on KTN News. And we are speaking about the state of the nation as Kenya continues to ready itself, the IEBC and all the other institutions, as Kenyans continue to get prepared for that repeat presidential election. A lot of political activity, not very much happening in terms of political campaigns, but a lot happening around the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, which is set to meet both NASA and Jubilee on Wednesday. We have seen such meetings in the past botched with either side, one of the sides failing to turn up or something like that. We'll see what happens. Gentlemen, let's talk about what Thomas Chitera was telling us about the ICT issue. Safran Morpho, the French company that is supplying, that was supplying the Kenya Integrated Election Management KIEMS system. NASA says, Prof, that Raila says we have to terminate this contract and blacklist Safran. Chitera says there's possibly not enough time to do that. What is your take on this? Because KIEMS is such an integral part of the Kenyan election system.
The primary observation is that Safran, or whatever name they go by, is actually, from the records available, doesn't have a very clean track record. Basically, it has bordered almost on being a criminal organization. Now that they are inside, I agree with Ichter that probably it may be difficult to evict them and replace them with a new organization. The only thing I want to observe here is that he suggested finding an organization that would audit those same systems so that they don't audit themselves, all right?
Like they did.
Yes. So wouldn't one consider a possibility of that organization that is acceptable to both of them being a replacement for them, since they appear like they have no credibility?
But remember, Kenya has a 3-year, or is it a 2-year contract with them?
Yeah.
So what would happen? That is money lost.
In the Kenyan public service system, particularly in a political contest, I do not think money loss, the taxpayers' money loss, has been a major consideration. What has been going on is that people will chase their political objective irrespective of what happens financially to the taxpayer. Now, this is part of our political culture. We are dirty, we are disrespectful to the voter, and I do not think this particular argument, all right, will outweigh the argument of cleaning up the system. For me, at the moment, any cost that would help the system to be cleaned for posterity, not for individuals,
right, for
posterity, is the money will be worth spending. Because you look at how much money has been wasted doing things that don't have as much significance as the vote, then clearly I wouldn't give that as a legitimate excuse.
Mutinda, Safran is saying that they need more time to reconfigure those KIEMS kits, that the election cannot possibly be held on the 17th of October. What is your view on this Safran debate?
My view is that they are the people who are in charge of that particular aspect of the election. And what is commendable about them is that whatever extension they are seeking is still within the constitutional time frame. I would have a problem with them if they would start telling us about extending beyond the timelines. But if they are telling us that whatever we need them to do will need more time, then it's upon the stakeholders to sit down and see how best they can handle that, because then, you know, having a few extra days and getting it right within the stipulated time is much more better than going for an election, which again will raise a lot of issues. So if, from a technical perspective, them as the authority, as the people who are dealing with this, can see that time constraint is not going to allow them to do whatever they need to do by 17th, I think the stakeholders need to come together. I saw the education stakeholders today met. So what is important is that all the stakeholders involved in the election, together with those who are handling the education docket, need to agree on what are the ramifications of this change, and how best do we handle it in a way that it's least disruptive of the exam calendar. I think that would be the issue. Then the issue of changing the supplier altogether. Even the expert himself seems to agree that there is no time for that. And what is important is we need to have utmost good faith. We need to demonstrate goodwill. And the goodwill in this case is to try and do things within the constitutional framework. So we need to identify. Prof is correct when he talks about posterity. But the question is, what are the things that need to be done in the short term, and what are the things that need to be done in the long term? It is important for us to separate those two things, because of course in the long run there are things that we will need to do, but in the short term, what needs to be done is the things that will make us have a repeat election within the 60 days as directed by the Supreme Court. When you start going outside that, then we start casting doubt on your commitment to this repeat election. And there are implications of us not having the repeat election, which would not be good for this country.
All right.
Ben, I wanted to differ slightly with him. He's talking about goodwill. A criminal mind has goodwill only when the criminal goals are met. So Safran has a record of having operated outside this thing you call goodwill. For them, apparently, their history is now for the public to see. What I think would not be good for the country at all is to insist that they should carry on this business. If I was in that stakeholders meeting, I would say, in order to maintain the date, then we must have a parallel organization that audits Safran as it does its job if you want to maintain the contract.
All right.
Now, this parallel organization would be like a group of professionals, all right, who would, like the ICT professionals body,
right,
would be appoint specific professionals to be able to not so much audit their technical know-how, but audit their conduct while carrying out their technical duties.
All right, good point. As you mentioned, a lot of these conversations revolve around the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, and there has been many calls from the NASA side to have around 12 members or 12 managers in that IEBC, including 2 commissioners, and the CEO of the Secretariat be sacked because of what NASA say is their role in bungling the August 8th election, as well as being jailed. And there has been a lot of backlash as well from the Jubilee side on why NASA is attacking the Electoral Commission. Let's listen to that.
The Kivito Electoral Commission, the Isaac Hessen Independent Electoral Commission, and now the IEBC led by Chiloba, they will not survive. Bwana Chiloba akikataa kutoka, ataona yale ambaye Bwana Isaka sana wenzake waliona. Uzi itafanywa kulingana na masharti ile ambaye NASA imeweka. Inaitwa the irreducible minimum conditions, which must be fulfilled before we go for a repeat presidential elections. We are ready, but we are ready on our own terms.
Tunasema hii kampuni ya Ufaransa ambayo inaitwa Safran, kwanza tunataka tujue local partners wao hapa ni kina nani.
When our competitors say that it is not that they want to boycott the election, that there will be no election in Kenya, what are they telling us? There can only be 2 ways where there will be no election in Kenya. Either there will be a coup, or there will be violence and chaos. That is the only 2 options that are available to us.
As we wind up, gentlemen, very strong sentiments from the NASA leaders, with their irreducible minimum reforms and saying they will not budge, and then, intimating or insinuating that they will ask their supporters to go to the streets, what we saw being infamously known as tear gas Mondays, saying they will want to go back to that. I mean, and then the deputy president, Jubilee side, also sticking to their guns with very, hardline positions on what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Ben. I believe that when these people sit together with IEBC, all right, both parties have stated what I call their extreme positions. The purpose of meeting is to negotiate starting from those extreme positions. The central point in all this really is that the areas that appear or have been pronounced to have caused a disturbance in the electoral process have not been fixed, all right? In my view, the best advice would be let them agree on what must, one, be mandatorily fixed and what should be optionally fixed. You know, they can't all be of equal importance.
All right.
There are some that are a primary cause, all right, to the difficulties of the election, and there are others that are a subsidiary cause to those problems. My view is that when these people meet, those are the issues they are going to say. You identify the ones that constitute the core of what you call irreducible minimum, and you state your objection to this particular one, or state your position vis-a-vis the demand that has been made.
All right. Mutinda, what happens? What now? What next?
You know, the most worrying thing is that some of the pronunciations that have been made are casting doubt as to whether we are going to have this repeat election or not. And I think that is what I have a problem with, because I wouldn't want to envisage a situation where we do not have a repeat election within the stipulated time, because it is going to take us to unknown territories, which would not be good for the country. So I want to agree with the Prof to the extent that once these stakeholders meet, let them be clear on what is it that can be done in the short term, like I said, so that we have this repeat election, and what it is they will do in the long run for posterity to ensure that we have no repeat of some of these issues that are coming up time and again. But the most important thing we all need to agree on is that we need to have this repeat election. Why am I saying this? Because that is what democracy demands. The sovereign will of the people has to be determined. There was a dispute when we first went to the ballot.
Yes.
And we wouldn't want to imagine anything else that denies us, as the citizenry, who possess all the sovereign power, an opportunity to decide who's going to govern us for the next 5 years.
Thank you, gentlemen. It is a topic, it is an issue, and issues that we continue to discuss as Kenyans continue to prepare for that repeat election. We continue to wait for the IEBC stakeholder meeting with both NASA and Jubilee, and we'll be following that up for you. Mutinda Kavemba, Jubilee strategist and governance expert, Professor Eri Tumbo, thank you so much for joining us and for giving us your perspectives. That's where we leave it on this edition of Kivumbi 2017. Thank you for staying with us. Don't go too far. At the top of the hour, Linda Ogutu will be coming up next with KTN Prime. Don't go too far.